Hey, welcome back to our continuing video training series, Tool Tips. Today we're going to be focusing on cutters. As you know, all manufacturers are offering several different models of cutter in their model lineup. We're not using maximum cutting forces as a specification anymore. We're using the NFPA mandated specifications to choose the cutter that's right for your department. Today we're going to have a choice between 5 different cutters, from the smallest up to the largest, all with different NFPA specification requirements. Visit right here for more information regarding NFPA performance specifications. So what we're going to do on this one, we're going to kind of simulate that our patient in here is kind of rapidly deteriorating. We've got the door open. Let's go ahead and have the spreader man expose that hinge for me just a little bit. Spreader man goes to the other side, goes to work. I'm going to come in with the cutter. I'm going to position that cutter properly, okay? So if I've got a movable D-ring on my cutter, I'm going to turn that dude up on its side. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp the hinge. This is definitely incorrect. This can damage your cutter. And then I'll open up and then I'll wrap the hinge. It's really important when we wrap a hinge that we bury those cutter blades in there as deep as they will go. So let's do this improperly. See there? I'm clamping the hinge, so this is wrong. Now I'm going to wrap the hinge, which is correct. See the difference in just a couple of inches makes in your overall success of the cut? It's really important that we wrap that hinge, not clamp that hinge. Let's talk a little bit about the order in which we spread and or cut a hinge, how we neutralize a hinge. That is so highly debatable in this extrication world. My personal preference, if I'm using a spreader, I like to spread the bottom of the bottom hinge, drive it up, top of the top, and drive it down. A lot of people like to start with the top and work their way down. Every way works. The way that I like to take a hinges with a cutter is I like to, just as we did here, I like to take that top hinge first. I can open that up on my own, expose that bottom hinge without the help of a spreader man, and then I can go right away and capture that bottom hinge. Remember, on a lot of these hinges, you're going to have a really large high tension spring, and we're going to talk to you about that in just a minute. But with a cutter, to recap, I like to take the top hinge first, expose the bottom hinge a little bit, cut the bottom hinge, and we're done. Okay, so we have neutralized that top hinge with a cutter. Now remember, our spreader operator is working elsewhere on this same vehicle, or maybe a second or third vehicle involved in this accident. So we've neutralized the top hinge with the cutter. I'm on my own, so I've now moved that door around a little bit to where I have exposed that bottom hinge. Now I'm going to come in with the cutter blades, and remember, I'm going to wrap that entire hinge with the cutter blades before I make that cut. Before I close it all the way, I'm going to confirm that I am wrapped and not clamped. Okay, here we go. So that top hinge was neutralized. We opened the door a little bit, kind of pushed the door down a little bit as much as we could, exposed that bottom hinge as much as possible. I moved the handle around to the 12 o'clock position, grab the back of the housing, the handle, come straight in, wrap that bottom hinge, close the blades, finish that cut, open up, back out, cut the wiring, back out. Hinges are neutralized. Okay, now that we have neutralized the hinges, the door is out of the way, let's talk about making relief cuts in preparation for a dash roll. I prefer to make my first cut right here in the wiring chase. I'll hook the outside blade into the wiring chase, the other blade inside. That way, 90% of the time, the back of that drive unit is going to come out on me versus moving into my patient. If I do not have a wiring chase, my next option will be down here, and we'll incorporate a New York hook. Let's go to work. The second cut, if I have a cutter that's wide enough to wrap all of that material, I'll go down here. Now the third cut that we're going to throw into service here incorporates a New York hook in. Please make sure and check with your manufacturer to see if this is an approved method to use with your manufacturer's tools. Okay, so we made 2 relief cuts on the front A post. Honestly, we ran out of material, so we still want to show you this technique. So we're going to move around to the B post. We're going to clamp onto that B post. But most importantly, we're talking to you a little bit about the New York hook now. So the New York hook is into the ground, up against the A post and or roof rail. It's straight up and down. This is really important. Take a look at where the New York hook is making contact with the rescue tool. The hook itself is making, the handle itself is making contact with the cylinder, not the drive unit, not the control valve, not the pigtails, not the battery housing, the cylinder. Again, check with your manufacturer to make sure that this is a safe evolution to do with your rescue tools. So now that we've got everything in place, we'll go ahead and make this cut. And you can see, had we not had that steel New York hook there, the back of that rescue tool could have driven into my dash or into my patient. The hook very simply made contact with the cylinder, prevented that from going into my patient compartment. Let's talk about angle of attack with a cutter. So this is the way that I do not like to make this cut. I don't like to cut this out of square. I don't like to cut it with the control valve or the drive unit down below. I like to come straight in from this angle. And I'm going to hold this cutter just like so, deep into the blades, and here we go. Okay, again, let's revisit that conversation that we just had a few minutes ago about angle of attack. If you'll look, we're going to bring this cutter in at a very sharp angle. The blades are actually below the drive unit. So all of that glass and debris are going to run down off the end of the blade instead of climbing up inside to where the boot is and the yoke and such, the mechanicals of the cutter are operating. So it's kind of important to keep the glass and the debris and the metal out of those areas where the mechanicals are of the tool. We could damage our rescue tool, whether we damage a piston or the blades. Let's take a little precautionary work and just roll that material down off of the blades. And occasionally, if we get some glass and debris on our cutter blades, just very simply wipe it off. Clear your blades. Okay, so that wraps up the cutter section of tool tips from How Rescue Systems. If you'd like more opportunity for hands-on training, please visit crashcoursevillage.org. Visit one of our training classes here in Dayton, Ohio, or we can actually bring the training classes to you. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.